Hey everyone, and welcome. So, when you think of Perth, Australia, I bet you picture sunshine, beautiful beaches, maybe that amazing skyline. But what if I told you that underneath all that, there's a history that's a whole lot darker, and honestly, just plain weirder than you could ever imagine? So, today, let's pull back that sunny curtain and take a good look at the strange and spectral side of Perth. And that really gets us to the big question, right? What actually makes a city haunted? Is it just having a bunch of old buildings, or is there something more to it? We're going to dive into how these really specific, intense moments in history can leave a kind of permanent scar on a place. The core idea we're exploring here is that some places are kind of like historical sponges. They're not just made of wood and stone. They literally soak up the powerful emotions from events that happen there. Agony, fear, betrayal. And the theory is, over time, all that absorbed energy starts to, well, leak out. This is the idea that's behind so many of Perth's ghost stories. And a lot of that leakage, it seems to start way back in the colonial era. We're talking about a time filled with institutional cruelty and just heartbreaking personal tragedies. And all of that suffering really laid the foundation for some of the city's most famous hauntings. Okay, so our first stop, it's the perfect example of this. If you go to the Fremantle Arts Center today, it's this vibrant, creative place. But its first life was as the Fremantle Lunatic Asylum, a place that was basically defined by misery. Let's see how that history has just refused to stay buried. The records of what happened here are just shockingly specific. This wasn't just a grim place. It was a site of documented horror. I mean, can you imagine rooms built for a handful of people, but they're crammed with 20? There are actual records of a nurse who would poke patients with her hat pins, a patient being martyred by another inmate, suicides, and of course the widespread use of electric shock therapy. Each one of those events is just another layer of trauma soaking into that historical sponge. And this is where it gets really interesting, where the history lines up perfectly with the hauntings. People report the distinct smell of burning right near the old shock therapy rooms, and the most famous ghost, a woman in white, is said to be a patient whose red-headed daughter was taken from her, and even today, visitors with red hair report the feeling of their hair being tugged. It's wild. It's like the trauma is literally replaying itself for anyone who visits. And look, this isn't just happening in asylums. Perth's oldest hotels are absolute hotspots too. Over at the Rose and Crown, the murderous, jealous rage of a man named Charlie supposedly still echoes in the cellar. And then you've got the Kalamunda Hotel, where the tragic suicide of an abandoned pregnant teenager is said to cause glowing lights and cold spots in the very room she died in. These are intensely personal tragedies, and they've left a permanent stain. But what happens when that trauma isn't contained inside four walls? Now we're going to look at how violent public events can leave a scar not just on one building, but on a whole city's collective memory. Back in 1955, the Midland Town Hall became the scene of a truly horrific public crime. A woman named Daria Malawa was trying to get a separation from her husband. He followed her there and stabbed her to death 11 times right on the main staircase for everyone to see. This wasn't some hidden tragedy. It was a brutal public act. And check out how that specific violence shows up today. People don't just see some generic, solitary figure. They report feeling a phantom stabbing sensation or suddenly being unable to breathe in the exact spot where she was killed. The haunting isn't just an echo. It's like a physical replay of the trauma itself. And then there are places like the Gunungara Pines. Its creepy reputation doesn't come from one old ghost story. It comes from its chilling real-life history as a body-dumping ground for modern serial killers like the Bernies. The sense of dread there comes from the weight of multiple very real horrors, which is how it earned the grim title of Perth's unofficial graveyard. Okay, so Perth's weird history isn't all ghosts and gruesome tragedies. Sometimes it's just plain bizarre. We are about to take a hard left turn from the supernatural into one of the absolute strangest events in all of military history. So picture this. It's 1932, and farmers in Western Australia are having a massive problem. About 20,000 emus are destroying all their crops. So what do? They call in the military. This sets the scene perfectly. On one side, you've got the Royal Australian Artillery with Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. And on the other side, a giant flock of very large, very fast, flightless birds. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Yeah, this quote it absolutely nails it. the soldiers found out pretty quickly that emus are incredibly hard targets. They don't cluster together in a neat little group, they scatter in all directions. The machine guns were powerful, sure, but they were completely useless for the task. It was a total tactical nightmare. So the outcome was, well, pretty undeniable. The emus won. The military just withdrew, the operation was a complete failure, and the whole thing became a source of national and international jokes. It's definitely a scar on the national psyche, but one born from pure absurdity, not agony. All right, so we've gone from the grim to the absurd, and now we're heading into the truly inexplicable. This next story is maybe the most famous and strangest one to ever come out of this region. It's a close encounter that really defies any easy explanation. Let's just walk through exactly what they said happened. It's 1988, and the Knowles family is driving across the Nullarbor Plain. Suddenly, this huge, intensely bright, egg-shaped thing appears on the road ahead of them. Then, it starts chasing them. And then, it landed on their roof and lifted their entire car up off the ground. While this was happening, they said their voices became all weird and distorted, like they were in slow motion. Finally, the car was just dropped back onto the road, bursting a tire and leaving the whole vehicle covered in this weird, fine ash. Now, a story this wild would be really easy to just dismiss, right? But there's a catch. There's a corroboration. Just minutes after the family's terrifying ordeal, a tuna boat crew 50 miles away reported being buzzed by a strange object in the sky, and their timeline lined up perfectly with the family's account. And that one piece of evidence just elevates this whole story from a crazy claim to a really compelling mystery. This final thought from them really captures the feeling of the whole thing. For those terrifying moments, they were totally powerless. Their car was handled as if it were nothing more than a toy, being picked up by something that was completely outside of their understanding of how reality works. So where does all this leave us? I mean, we've journeyed through ghostly asylums, we've talked about a ridiculous war with birds, and we've ended on a terrifying roadside encounter with something. What does it all add up to? Well, I think Perth's story isn't just one thing. It's not just about the sunshine and the beaches. Its real identity is this incredibly complex mosaic, pieced together from colonial tragedies, moments of pure absurdity, and events that just defy all rational explanation. These stories, the ghosts, the emus, the UFOs, that's what gives the city its unique and lingering weirdness. And that leaves us with one final thought. Every town, every city, every single one has its own layers of history and folklore. So what are the stories, the tragic, the funny, or the completely unexplainable, that have soaked into the historical sponge where you live? What are the stories that define your home? Thanks for watching.